They're banned across Europe, but eaten every single day in the UK. Behind the bright colours and friendly packaging are substances linked to shocking health warnings, pulled from European stores and quietly left in ours. So today, we're counting down 10 banned in Europe ingredients still eaten daily in the UK and exposing exactly where they're hiding. And wait until you hear number 1, because it's inside a food nearly every child in Britain eats without thinking. Number 10. The white powder, the EU banned, still in UK sweets. Walk down any UK supermarket aisle and you'll see sweets so glossy and brightly coloured they almost look unreal. Chewy gummies with that perfect smooth coat. Mints that seem impossibly white. Children's candies polished to a glassy shine. For years, these products looked completely harmless. Something you'd toss into a shopping trolley without a second thought. After all, if it's sold in stores, surely someone checked it, approved it, and made sure it was safe, right? What most people never realised is that this shine often comes from a colouring agent called titanium dioxide, a substance the European Union officially banned from food in 2022. Regulators reviewed the safety data and reached a deeply unsettling conclusion. They could not rule out the possibility that titanium dioxide, especially in its nanoparticle form, might accumulate in the body and interfere with DNA integrity. For Europe, that uncertainty alone was enough to pull it from thousands of food products overnight. But the UK made a very different decision. After Brexit, regulators examined the same studies and allowed titanium dioxide to remain in food. So while EU shelves cleared, UK shelves stayed exactly the same. Today, millions of people still consume it daily through sweets, gummies, mints, pastries, icing, sauces, even chewable vitamins and supplements. And this is where the concern grows. Titanium dioxide particles are so tiny that the body struggles to remove them. Some studies show they can build up in the gut. Others suggest they may contribute to inflammation or interact with cellular processes in ways scientists still don't fully understand. For adults, that raises long-term questions. For children who eat colourful sweets every week, sometimes every day, the uncertainty becomes even more troubling. The truth is simple. The EU acted out of caution, while the UK chose continuity. But consumers were never truly told the difference, and most people have no idea this banned additive is still sitting inside the sweets they eat without hesitation. And if that makes you uncomfortable, wait until you see number 9. Because the next banned in Europe chemical isn't hiding in treats. It's hiding in something your household probably buys every single week: bread. Number 9. The bread chemical. Europe refused to allow. Bread is one of the most familiar, comforting foods in the world, and in the UK, it's practically a household essential. Toast in the morning, sandwiches at lunch, rolls with dinner. It's something families buy on autopilot, trusting that such a basic staple must be completely safe. And why wouldn't it be? Bread feels simple. Flour, water, yeast. Nothing suspicious, nothing dramatic. But modern industrial baking is very different from the old-fashioned loaf you might imagine. To keep up with mass production, some manufacturers use flour improvers that make dough stronger, fluffier, and more visually appealing. One of those substances is potassium bromate, a chemical the European Union banned because of concerns it may be carcinogenic when consumed over time. Europe decided the potential risk wasn't worth the improved texture. Yet here's the twist most people don't know. Although it's not commonly used by UK bakers, potassium bromate can still enter the country through imported bread products, bread mixes, and certain baked goods made with bromated flour. And because labelling rules don't always make this obvious, the average shopper could never tell which products contain it. That's where the unease begins. Studies have shown that if potassium bromate is not fully converted during baking, and testing has repeatedly shown that often it isn't, small amounts may remain in the finished product. Those residues are what pushed European regulators to reject it entirely. But UK consumers remain exposed, particularly through lower cost or imported baked goods, where flour treatments differ from domestic standards. Think about how often bread appears on your table. Think about how casually children eat slices of toast, rolls, or sandwiches multiple times a day. When a chemical with cancer concerns shows up in something that common, even in trace amounts, it raises serious questions about oversight, transparency, and long-term exposure. And here's the unsettling part. Bread isn't the only everyday food hiding a chemical Europe banned long ago. Because number 8 is something even more shocking. A substance once used in yoga mats, now found in certain fast food buns and sandwich loaves across the UK. Number 8. The yoga mat chemical. Inside fast food buns. Most people think fast food buns are simple. Just bread, maybe a touch of sweetness, nothing too unusual. But modern commercial baking is far more engineered than it looks. Those soft, springy, perfectly uniform buns don't happen by accident. They're designed for durability, shelf life, texture, and color. And to achieve that consistency, some manufacturers use additives the average person has never heard of and would never expect in something they eat. One of the most infamous is Azodicarbonamide, often called the yoga mat chemical. It earned that nickname because it's used in the production of foamed plastics, the same material found in exercise mats, shoe soles, and other spongy rubber products. While that doesn't automatically make it unsafe, it certainly doesn't inspire confidence. European Union clearly agreed. They banned azodicarbonamide from food due to concerns about allergic reactions, respiratory issues, and the potentially harmful compounds it forms during baking. But in the UK, the story is different. Azodicarbonamide is still permitted as a flour treatment agent, and although not every bakery uses it, some fast food chains, low-cost bread producers, and mass-market sandwich loaves have historically relied on it to create that soft, elastic texture consumers recognize. And because labels often hide it behind technical terms, most shoppers never realize what they're eating. The real problem is what happens when azodicarbonamide is exposed to high heat. Baking can break it down into chemicals like semicarbazide, which raised enough toxicological questions for Europe to pull the plug. The UK, however, continues to allow controlled use, meaning some consumers may still be eating trace byproducts each time they grab a burger or a packaged sandwich. For anyone with asthma, sensitivities, or allergies, this alone might be concerning. For parents buying quick lunches for their children, it raises bigger questions about transparency and trust. How many other seemingly simple foods contain additives you'd never guess were there? And just wait, because if a yoga mat ingredient in bread sounds bad, number 7 is even more unsettling. It shows up in bright, colourful snacks that children love, and it's been heavily restricted across Europe for years. Number 7, the controversial red dye in kids' snacks. If there's one thing nearly every child loves, it's brightly coloured sweets. The red ones, especially, the cherries, the gummies, the fizzy strips, the jelly shapes. Parents buy them without thinking, because they've been around forever. They look cheerful, familiar, safe, but those vibrant colours don't come from fruit juice or natural berries. They often come from synthetic dyes, created purely to make food look fun. And one of the most controversial of them all is red dye number 3, also known as erythrocene. Across the EU, this colouring has been heavily restricted for years due to concerns about thyroid effects and neurodevelopment. Regulators decided that children, whose bodies and brains are still developing, shouldn't be routinely exposed to it. So, European shelves slowly phased it out of many bright, artificial snacks. But the UK took a different path. Red dye number 3 still appears in glacé cherries, certain sweets, baked goods, and colourful snacks found at corner shops and major supermarkets. And that's where parents often get caught off guard. These aren't obscure products. They're the cherries you put on a cake, the gummy mix you toss in your child's lunchbox, the novelty snacks kids grab after school. With no warning label and no context, it's easy to miss the ingredient that Europe took steps to restrict years ago. What makes this even more concerning is how artificially coloured foods tend to be marketed, specifically to children, the group most vulnerable to early life chemical exposure. Some studies have linked synthetic dyes to behavioural changes in sensitive children. Others raise long-term questions about thyroid function, especially when consumed frequently. It doesn't help that erythrocene's bright, almost glowing appearance makes it incredibly appealing to young eyes. They reach for these foods precisely because of the colour, completely unaware that the colour is the issue. And if a red dye in children's snacks is enough to raise eyebrows, wait until you hear number 6. Because Europe didn't just ban it from sweets. They banned it from a drink ingredient millions of people consume without ever reading the label. A citrus soda additive that shocked EU regulators and still appears in UK beverages. Number 6. The soda ingredient. Europe threw out. Citrus soft drinks are some of the most refreshing beverages on UK shelves. Lemonades, orange sodas, lime drinks, tropical blends. They look innocent enough, colorful, fizzy, fun. The kind of drink you grab at a corner shop without a second thought. But what most people never realize is that the EU banned one of the key ingredients once used to keep those citrus flavors perfectly mixed and suspended: brominated vegetable oil, better known as BVO. For decades, BVO was added to certain fizzy drinks to stop the citrus oils from separating. Without it, the flavor would rise to the top, creating an unpleasant oily layer. So manufacturers relied on BVO to keep everything looking smooth and consistent. But EU scientists grew increasingly concerned about one thing: bromine, the element at the heart of BVO. Bromine is also used in flame retardants, and when consumed regularly, it can build up in the body. Studies raise questions about how this accumulation might affect the thyroid, the nervous system, and even reproductive health. Europe decided it wasn't worth the risk. They banned BVO entirely. But the UK still permits it in specific formulations, meaning some citrus drinks sold here may still contain it, especially certain imported or niche sodas that haven't updated their recipes. The casual shopper has no idea. Kids sip them, teenagers buy them after school, adults grab them for a quick energy lift, and the ingredient rarely gets a second look. This is where the gap between EU caution and UK leniency becomes especially clear. When one region bans a substance for safety concerns and another continues to allow it, consumers are left in the dark, unsure who to trust. And meanwhile, families keep drinking these products without ever imagining they contain a chemical Europe wasn't comfortable with. And before we move to the next item, if you're finding this eye-opening, make sure to like this video so more people can see what's really inside their everyday food, and subscribe so you don't miss the next exposés we're uncovering. Your engagement genuinely helps get this information to people who need to hear it. Because number 5 is where things get even more complicated. It's not about drinks or snacks anymore. It's about dairy. And the EU doesn't just restrict this one, they banned it outright. Number 5, hormone-linked dairy. The EU rejects. Dairy feels like one of the safest, most familiar parts of the British diet. Cheese on toast, a splash of milk in tea, yogurt pots in kids' lunchboxes, chocolate bars that everyone snacks on without a second thought. It's the kind of everyday food people trust instinctively. Simple, wholesome, natural. But what most shoppers don't realize is that not all dairy is created equally, and depending on where it's imported from, what you're eating in the UK may be very different from what the EU allows on its shelves. Across the European Union, milk from cows treated with the hormone RBST, also known as recombinant bovine somatotropin, is banned outright. EU regulators rejected it years ago over a combination of animal welfare concerns and unresolved safety questions about hormone residues entering the food chain. Europe took a firm stance. If there's any risk that hormonal manipulation of dairy cows could affect consumers, especially children and pregnant women, it wouldn't be allowed. But the UK operates under different rules. While UK farmers don't use RBST domestically, the country does allow dairy imports from nations where RBST is legal and widely used, such as the United States. And once those ingredients enter the UK supply chain, they can appear in everything from processed cheese to chocolate bars to cheap ice creams to powdered milk used in biscuits and baked goods. There's no giant warning label, no hormone-treated dairy badge. Most people have absolutely no idea it's there. That's where the concern grows. Hormonal residues, even in extremely small amounts, spark debate among scientists for their potential effects on human endocrine systems. And for children whose bodies are still developing, long-term exposure is something many specialists argue should be approached with extreme caution. The EU agrees, but UK rules allow these products through as long as imports meet basic safety requirements, a standard far less strict than Europe's outright ban. So while British shoppers feel confident grabbing dairy-based snacks and sweets, they may unknowingly be eating ingredients that European supermarkets refuse to stock on principle. It's a silent divide, one the public rarely hears about. And if hormone-linked dairy makes you uneasy, wait until you see number 4. Because the next item isn't just controversial for what it is, it's controversial for how tiny it is and how easily it can slip into foods without anyone noticing. Number 4. Ultra-fine particles, hiding in sweets and vitamins. Some ingredients are easy to spot: bright colors, strong flavors, Long chemical names that look suspicious on a label. But the next one is far more unsettling, because you can't see it, taste it, or even imagine it's there. These are ultrafine particles, often nano-sized forms of ingredients, like titanium compounds, so small they slip into food unnoticed. And while Europe has taken a strict precautionary stance on them, the UK still allows their use in certain sweets, supplements, and chewable vitamins. These tiny particles give candies their smooth surface, help tablets hold their shape, and make supplements look clean and bright. To the average shopper, they seem harmless, just part of the manufacturing process. But the EU raised a different set of questions. What happens when particles so small enter the human body? Do they accumulate? Do they pass through barriers larger particles can't? And could long-term exposure pose risks science hasn't fully mapped out yet? Those unanswered questions pushed European regulators to clamp down hard. They treated nano-sized particles as a separate safety category, requiring stricter scrutiny before they could be used. In many cases, companies simply pulled them from products rather than undergo extensive assessment. But the UK maintained more flexible rules, meaning these same particles can still appear in everyday products, especially in colourful sweets and chewable vitamins that children consume more frequently than adults. The concern isn't a dramatic, immediate danger, it's the quiet uncertainty. Tiny particles that don't break down easily, particles that may travel further in the body because of their size, particles that could behave very differently from their larger, approved counterparts. European regulators weren't comfortable with that ambiguity, and many health experts argue that when it comes to products used by children, uncertainty itself should be treated as risk. Meanwhile, families in the UK have no idea that the glittery sheen on a sweet or the bright coating on a vitamin may come from ingredients banned or scrutinised far more heavily in neighbouring countries. And if invisible particles raise questions, number 3 is even more unsettling, because unlike hidden ingredients inside sweets, this one can leach directly into your food from the packaging itself. Number 3. The packaging chemical that leaks into canned foods. Canned foods feel like one of the safest, most convenient staples in the kitchen. Soup for a quick lunch, tinned vegetables for a last-minute dinner, beans, tomatoes, tuna, foods people rely on weekly, especially during busy days or tight budgets. Most families store multiple cans at home without even thinking about them. After all, canned goods have been trusted for generations. But what many shoppers don't realize is that it's not only the food inside the can that matters, it's the lining of the can itself. And that's where BPA, or bisphenol A, enters the picture. BPA is a chemical used to harden plastics and create protective linings inside metal cans, preventing corrosion and helping food stay fresh longer. It sounds practical, harmless, necessary even. But European regulators saw something else. Research began to show that BPA doesn't always stay in the lining where it belongs. It can migrate into the food, especially with acidic products like tomatoes or when cans are stored in warm environments. And that raised serious concerns. BPA is what scientists call an endocrine disruptor, meaning it can interfere with hormone function. The EU responded aggressively, banning BPA from baby bottles, restricting it heavily in food contact materials, and tightening the limits again as new evidence emerged. Yet the UK still allows broader use of BPA in can linings and packaging. That means many canned soups, vegetables, beans, fruits, sauces, and even tinned fish could contain trace amounts. Consumers wouldn't know. Labels don't shout, "contains BPA." It's invisible, silent, unmentioned. This is especially concerning for parents. Young children are more vulnerable to hormone-disrupting chemicals because their endocrine systems are still developing, but adults aren't immune either. Some studies link chronic BPA exposure to issues such as altered hormone levels, metabolic changes, and potential reproductive effects. The science isn't settled, but it's serious enough for Europe to take strong action, and yet the UK shelves remain largely unchanged. Think about how often canned foods appear in British households. Quick meals, emergency pantry items, kids' lunches, simple dinners. And each time, BPA could be part of the equation without anyone realizing. But what comes next might surprise you even more, because number 2 isn't hiding in food at all. It's hiding in something you swallow on purpose, often every single day. Number 2, the pill colouring. The EU is eliminating. Most people swallow tablets without ever thinking about what's actually in them. Painkillers, daily vitamins, supplements, antihistamines, prescription meds. They all come in smooth, polished capsules or bright coated tablets. The coating looks harmless, almost reassuring. It makes pills easier to swallow, protects the contents, and gives them a clean, uniform appearance. But buried inside many of those coatings is a coloring agent that Europe has been actively phasing out: titanium dioxide. Yes, the same additive banned from EU food because of unresolved safety concerns is still used widely in UK medicines and supplements. While Europe took the position that if titanium dioxide wasn't safe enough for food, it shouldn't be in pills either, the UK chose a different timeline. Regulators here allowed it to remain until pharmaceutical companies could reformulate, a process that, in reality, can take years. That means millions of people in the UK are still swallowing titanium dioxide daily without realizing it. It's in common over-the-counter medicines, kids' chewable vitamins, chalky tablets, capsules, and even some dissolvable forms. The coating isn't just decorative, it's consumed, and often more, consistently, than the sweets or snacks that triggered concern in the first place. For many, this is where the worry deepens. The EU banned titanium dioxide from food because of questions about potential DNA interaction and long-term accumulation. The UK allowed the same substance to continue inside products people ingest far more regularly, especially those managing chronic conditions. A child taking a daily multivitamin may be exposed for years. An adult on regular medication might swallow titanium dioxide hundreds of times a year. No one is saying it causes immediate harm, but the contrast is striking. A full EU ban on food use versus continued UK use in medicines. One regulatory body took the strictest possible route, the other took the slowest. Consumers are left to navigate that gap without clear guidance, or even knowing it exists. And if pills are concerning, the number one spot is reserved for something even more widespread. Because this time, the additives aren't just inside one product, they're inside the animals people eat every day. Number 1. EU banned additives in your salmon, bacon, and chicken. When people think about food safety, they usually think about ingredients added after the animal is processed: marinades, seasonings, preservatives. But the most significant chemicals aren't sprinkled on top. They're fed to the animals long before they reach your dinner plate. Across the EU, regulators banned or tightly restricted several additives used in animal feed, including certain antibiotics, coloring agents, and chemical growth promoters. Why? Because what goes into the animal doesn't stay in the feed. It enters the animal's tissues, the fat, the muscle, and eventually you eat it. But in the UK, some of these feed practices continue. Others enter the country through imported meats that don't match Europe's stricter standards. That means everyday foods like farm salmon, supermarket bacon, and chicken breasts may contain residues of additives the EU refused to allow, especially color enhancers used in salmon farming or feed additives used to control disease or speed growth. For salmon, the issue is particularly striking. Europe tightened rules on certain synthetic pigments and fish feed additives used to create that bright pink color consumers expect. Many UK suppliers still rely on similar methods, meaning your salmon's color may not be as natural as it looks. For bacon and chicken, some imported feed practices involve substances Europe has long rejected due to concerns about resistance, residues, and long-term health effects. These aren't immediate dangers, but they represent the biggest category of divergence between EU and UK food policy, a gap consumers rarely see, let alone understand. And the scale is massive. While sweets or sodas may be occasional treats, meat and fish are everyday staples. When feed additives Europe banned continue through UK supply chains, families consume them weekly, sometimes daily, without any awareness of how differently those foods would be regulated just across the channel. This isn't about fear, it's about transparency, because people deserve to know what they're really eating and why Europe stepped away from it. But this video isn't just about individual choices, it's about awareness, because millions of people in the UK are eating ingredients every day that Europe refused to allow, and almost no one knows. By sharing this information, you help close that knowledge gap. You help protect families who don't realize these differences exist. You help educate people who assume everything on shelves is safe everywhere. So if you learned something today, leave a comment and tell us which item shocked you the most. Share this video with friends and family so they can understand what's really inside their food. And if you want more investigations like this, more breakdowns of what companies don't tell you. Make sure you subscribe for future exposés.